Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cabinet. Item 1's apologies, please. Do you have any apologies? Councillor Williams and Councillor Skelton. Any others to note? No. Late items are no formally late items, but we do have an additional paper, 11B, to financial matters, which we'll deal with when we get there. We have no petitions. We have no items, urgent items, to which call-in will not apply. Declarations of interest, please. Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September 2019. A proposer and seconder, please. Councillors Barker and Smale. Item 7, recommendations from the Exec Scrutiny Board. We have copies, and as become practice, we'll deal with them on each individual item as we go along, if that's okay. So that leads us to item 8, which is Adult Social Care Strategy. Paul, sorry. Yes.
The other one, Andy. Yes, thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is for Cabinet to approve a consultation with a view to update our adult social care strategy, which was last done in 2015. Whilst there's no statutory requirement to have a strategy, it is considered good practice to set out our ambitions for adult social care, and this refresh provides a good vehicle for engagement with local people and partners. The refresh of the strategy will allow the Council to set out what it's trying to achieve within the statutory context of the 2014 Care Act. The strategy will set out the purpose of social care and our statutory duties under the Care Act, how the Council will continue to manage demand by enabling adults with social care needs to feel more in control and connected to their local community and area in the way in which they choose to lead their lives, and provide an opportunity for us to restate the approach that has been underpinning adult social care and a real success in Derby, which is about how we build on individual existing assets and strengths of people. The consultation on the strategy will helpfully draw on recent national surveys of social care users and carers. We will also use, where we can, existing and ongoing engagement activities, and this will be done by utilising a range of methods such as conversations during care reviews and obtaining feedback from things such as our customer experience and learning disability partnership boards. We will bring back a further report along with the proposed strategy in February 2020, so I would ask Cabinet to approve recommendation 2.1.
Okay, thank you. So Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and recommended that consideration is given to ensure linkages are made between adult social care and transport strategies for the city. Of particular interest may be bus services and information, safe walking routes and transport aids such as mobility scooters. I take it that this is the opening of a consultation on that we welcome these things to consider, as we would with anything brought up in the consultation, and be given due consideration. Roy, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I accept the recommendations from scrutiny. They will be useful as part of the consultation process and informing the strategy going forwards.
Thank you. Any questions or other comments? No, in that case, then we can go with recommendation 2.1. Can we approve that? Thank you. Approved. So item 9 is in relation to RAM Energy. Who's going to do this one? Roy.
Chair, as we know, RAM Energy has been going for 2 years now. It's a not-for-profit company that we run. The aim of it, or the key aim, is to help reduce fuel poverty, and that is done by accepting customers that would not normally be accepted by other energy providers. We have, which is good news, actually made an operational surplus, and as we are not for profit, then we would like to ring fence the operational surplus and reinvest in providing support for some of our users in fuel poverty. If I can take the recommendations at this time from executive scrutiny, I can assure executive scrutiny that our Healthy Housing Hub visits a range of clients, vulnerable clients across the city, irrespective of their energy providers. They undertake direct price comparisons for people who aren't able to do this for themselves and do the switching on their behalf, and they also refer the local authority energy partnership, which offers a range of specialist advice in terms of reducing energy bills and energy consumptions, assistance with accessing grants, and also upgrading heating systems, improving home insulation, and dealing with drafts, as well as personal health and well-being advice. So I am perfectly prepared to accept the recommendation from executive scrutiny on the understanding that we are comprehensively doing what they are asking for already. Thank you, Chair. Can I ask that we accept recommendations 2.1 and 2.2?
Just for complete clarity, what we're saying is then we do an affordable warmth advice already, but where it asks in terms of this funding should be used to facilitate that, that's not actually necessary because we do it in any case anyway. Is that
That's
right?
correct, Chair.
Okay, questions, comments? In that case, can we agree 2.1 and 2.2? Takes us to item 11, the purchase of land at Infinity Park.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Catherine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This report seeks Cabinet approval for the Council to acquire land at Infinity Park, Derby. Infinity Park, Derby, as Cabinet will be aware, is a strategic priority for employment within Derby City. And the purchase of this land will help us bring forward additional phases of science park development with the University of Derby at IPD. The acquisition is proposed to be funded from local growth fund money that we already have allocated to Infinity Park, Derby, and recommendation 2.2 refers to the fact that this will be subject to the LEP approving reallocation of money to this acquisition. And clearly what this will enable the Council to do is have direct control of land at Infinity Park, Derby, and will pave the way for attracting major investment into the park, which is essential for creating jobs and ensuring a good future for that part of the city.
Thank you. And the financial details, including the pink paper later on in the agenda. Okay, any questions, comments? In that case, we've got two recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2. The Exec Scrutiny Committee resolved to note the reports, I think, at the end of the day. We will deal with that also under item 13. So can we agree those two? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. So item 11 then is compliance and with contractual and financial procedure rules. Is that you, Paul? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The first two items, obviously there's a supplementary item which Councillor Alston is going to present. I'll do the first two items on the original report, which the first one of these, they're both, I guess you would describe as housekeeping items. The first, under our current financial procedure rules, we are required to present to Cabinet any change in use of a reserve and an earmarked reserve within communities and place trading services is being requested to be changed to be used for supporting the procurement process for the dry recyclables, the blue bins. And it's a relatively immaterial amount of £56,000. So that's the first item. The second item is seeking Cabinet's approval for the Council to enter into a partnership arrangement with the County Council and the Derby and Derbyshire CCG to provide, to go into a procurement process for support to children and young people. And this is obviously an innovative type approach in terms of a joint commissioned approach across the Derbyshire and Derbyshire footprint. I think it's quite important to stress that the issue that's being sought approval for from Cabinet is about going into the procurement itself. It doesn't mean that this will be a joint contract with the County Council and the CCG across Derbyshire and Derby. Derby City will have its own contract for the provision of services to children within Derby, but that will then be a joint arrangement with the CCG. So you can see there from paragraph 4.9 that the council itself contributes about £200,000, just over £200,000, and we also get about £200,000 from the CCG. So the overall provision of services to children in the city will be £433,000 per annum. So obviously seeking Cabinet's approval to approve those two recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. If we deal with this part of the item 11 first, the exec scrutiny recommended that if not already being done, to include the remit to the consultant on dry recyclables, how to maximise the value of collected recyclables, and how the public can help minimise the waste collection and disposal costs, i.e. look for more broadly at waste rather than simply a like-for-like procurement process to the current standards. Councillor Smell might like to comment on that.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yes, we can absolutely accept this recommendation. The whole point of this is because we have put a £1.25 million budget pressure in there for the next coming years with regards to the recyclates. Speaking with the waste team, this is the whole point of the consultancy, is to help obviously drive some of those costs down, but also look at alternative provisions of how we collect our waste. We do know that there is a waste strategy being looked at nationally, and we've seen some weird and wonderful schemes that have come forward. One of them notably that each household is given 5 bins for collecting waste streams in 5 different formats. So this is the whole point of having this consultancy. So then it gives us a good scope of where we're going to be in 3 years' time, because we might need to react very quickly in a very short space of time. So we will accept this recommendation.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? In that case, we have recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Can we accept those? Agreed. So we move on to 11B, the addendum, which is in relation to, again, it's under the contract and financial procedure rules. It's in relation to aging care. Who's going to, Councillor Ralston wants to start this?
Thank you, Chair. Recommendations from scrutiny are quite interesting. They ask for further information on the report, and today we have been going through that further information. There was a Cabinet report in 2016 that authorised the Strategic Director of Place, following consultation with the Strategic Director of People Services, to sell 5 of the Council's care homes. In effect, this evening we are looking at only 3 of those: Merrill House, Rainsway View, which are currently occupied by 19 residents, and Coleridge House, which is unoccupied at the moment. All those 19 residents will be funded at their current rates for their lifetime. So we are ensuring that those residents are properly looked after. We are also seeking within the contract, which was approved for new residents under a block contract, so this would be 25 residents under a block contract to be given residence at the new care homes. Now, when I say new, Coleridge House, as I've said, is currently empty. That will be refurbished and brought up to modern standards, and then Rainsway View and Merrill House at an investment of approximately £7 million. And that's something that this council cannot afford to do, and this also gives security for residents and secures those 3 care homes as uprated care homes to provide care across the city. So that will meet our care market provision within the city. The reason that we are coming for a block contract is under the regulations, Regulation 74 under the public contract regulations, which allows contracts for services listed under, and the point is Schedule 3 to the regulations, to be awarded without a full procurement procedure, and this is called the light touch procedure. So Schedule 3 includes health, social and related services, and the threshold for that funding is 615,000, which is what we've got in the report for recommendation. So it would be 25 residents, and the limit would be up to 615,000. It's purchases that we would normally make on behalf of care home residents as part of our block contract procedure. But, and there is a but, we are changing to a dynamic purchasing system for adult social care, which includes older people's residential care placements in January 2020. That does not give the purchaser enough time to get on to our contract procedure, and so we are looking for this block purchase to fill that gap until 2020, when the purchaser will go on to that direct purchasing system. So it will ensure that the sale goes through with a guarantee of 25 placements for the new purchaser, and that would secure care for 25 people across the city of Derby. This will also give us the opportunity to check on the levels of care that are provided by the new provider, and we are guaranteed that they will remain in the market for a number of years. If there is to be a sale of any of those care homes, i.e. they wish to get out of the market, then we will in effect get clawback on any purchase. So what I'm asking for in the recommendations is to agree, subject to the exchange of contracts in relation to Coleridge, Merrill and Rainsway View, to approve the award of residential care up to a total of 16,000 and to 615,000, sorry, and to approve a waiver of contract procedure rules, paragraph 7.2, to permit the direct award of the contract for the provision of adult residential care to Agincourt in accordance with paragraph 56, waivers of contract procedure rules. Sorry to be so technical, but
Agincourt, not Agincourt.
Agincourt. That's one in the eye for you.
Councillor Ralston, you indicated you'd like to contribute.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak up on this in terms of the procurement rules and regulations. I think what the Scrutiny Board did look at yesterday was fair, it was relevant, and I think it was fair to say that the detail that was needed to clarify what we were agreeing was a good challenge. I think in reality what that has allowed us to do today is to question that in detail, to identify everything within the procurement rules to make sure that that is the correct procedure. It is a way forward, it's a correct way of doing so, and most importantly is ensuring that the care of these individuals is continued and allows us to have relevant the number of beds that may be required as and when we need them. I think it's very obvious to say that with any care provider they will have to have certain standards and maintain to the same standards of any other care provider, and I think that was a concern that was raised verbally yesterday. And in terms of the actual contract rules, as Councillor Webb has looked at, it's a light touch regime, it's the Regulation 74, it is in compliance, it is in detail, and it's more than anything, it's a sensible and logical thing to do to enable the investment of this within these care homes. £7 million that this council couldn't afford to put into those to make the facilities more superior, better for those individuals in the city, and I think it's the right move to do. So although I accept the need for the detail to be in there, and that is something that we'll be challenging further down, I think on this occasion, having had the chance to review all the information, to get all the detail and to clarify that I am comfortable with that the procedure rules have been followed, I would recommend, Chair, that we don't accept the recommendation to withdraw, as we've been able to review that throughout today, and we've been able to present that information here this evening. I don't want to delay the purchase of these places and indeed potentially the sale of the properties to enable this to go through smoothly. And actually, in terms of the previous administration's strategy, this was agreed back in 2015 and therefore and then transferred onto delegated authority in 2016. It is the first opportunity that to come to Cabinet to effectively agree the way forward for this. So well done to that previous administration.
So, Councillor Anderson indicated.
Thank you. So I guess I'll just start off. So this recommendation, you know, in a committee like executive scrutiny, where there are political footballs being passed around quite frequently, this was unanimous. This wasn't a case of anyone deciding they wanted to score any political points. No one had anything to gain by this. What this also isn't, this isn't us saying as a committee that we don't want this to happen. There are probably some political discussions that need to happen around that, which I'll leave to you people who are in parties. But for me, it's about the scrutiny. Also, what it isn't, it's not suggesting for a second that the advice is incorrect. It's not suggesting that you've been misadvised. What it is saying that we've not received that advice. And I completely accept that you may have spent the day going through the papers, going through the information, but and you know, with respect, Councillor Ralston, it's not how scrutiny works. We're supposed to see it, we're supposed to scrutinise it, and you know, occasionally things do arrive late to scrutiny, and this was something that was sat in front of us that we hadn't had chance to have the pre-meetings that we will sometimes do on potentially contentious issues. So there was a whole line of things that just weren't acceptable. Now, in terms of the recommendation, and it does stand, and it was strongly felt. And, you know, I know that members of scrutiny would be very happy to have an extraordinary meeting if the need was there, to make sure that this gets through, to make sure that this is scrutinised properly. Because, you know, speaking solely as the chair of that committee, I am concerned that we've not had the chance to properly scrutinise what is actually going to happen. Now, I accept all the things we've been told. I really do, and I know that they all come from officers who are, you know, of a high quality and know their stuff. But I have serious concerns, and the committee has serious concerns that this has not been able to be scrutinised correctly. And, you know, I'll end just very quickly on, you know, today there was an opportunity, obviously, for me to accept a waiver for some information to be brought to this committee using pink papers, which is something that I have nothing against, and, you know, absolutely nothing against. But the issue for me on that would be that this committee should not see anything that, unless there's, well, that hasn't gone through scrutiny to some extent or been discussed, and I didn't feel comfortable in doing that. And I guess, just as a maybe a slightly cheeky request, if there are any more of the previous administration's decisions in the pipeline, can you let us all know so that we can brush up on them? Because this came from nowhere, as far as I'm concerned. I don't even know that I was a councillor when Councillor Banwaite decided it, or whoever it was at the time. And so the defence that keeps being given, that this is a previous decision, means nothing. We operate in thirds, which means that we could potentially very easily have an entire new council in that time. So let's never make those assumptions again, please. Let's make sure that scrutiny boards are given all the correct information. Otherwise, let's just not have scrutiny. We shouldn't pretend.
Do you want to come back on that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely want to accept what you're saying in terms of the details around this particular one. I think the reality of what I'm saying personally, and I think the Cabinet as a whole would say, is we agree that the devil in the detail was not there. It's something that we're addressing, and it's something that we need to make sure is fully up to date going forward. I think the reality of this particular process is that rather than us taking this to an urgent leaders decision within the next week, which potentially would be the other option, was to potentially pull this and take it to an urgent leaders decision. Rather than do that, we're trying to be open, transparent, give you the details, explain the logic behind it, and in terms of the actual buff, the information within that is still within the actual 11B. It's just not detailed enough, and with what I would say is, in layman terms, if you like, is in terms that we as lay members can understand, and that detail needed to be drawn out for us to be able to understand it. It's not that it's not there, it's that it's not clearly put out in a standard member's view. So it's not anything hidden, and what we're trying to do here is accept that what you're saying. There are points within this that we are going to learn lessons from, and I know that the officers around me know that there are lessons to learn from this. But in terms of putting this forward, we're being open, we're being transparent, we're coming back to you and saying, yep, you know what, the detail wasn't there, we're accepting that, but we found the detail, we're confident that what we're doing is the right thing to do for these individuals, and rather take it next week to an urgent leaders meeting, we're bringing it here to Cabinet, we're having these conversations clear and in front of everybody, and I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Councillor Anderson, from my point of view, there's a subtle difference here in that this item is included in the compliance and contract financial procedure rules section of the papers. It's not a case, it was never a case of reviewing or needing to bring the previous decisions in relation to the closure and sales of the residential homes. It was never about that. This was purely around covering the financial matters to facilitate that previous policy and agreement. That was all it was about. Now, when I saw this 2 days ago, I pointed out to my Cabinet colleagues and to officers that actually what's missing is the context. It's the context of what this deal is about and how it fits in with the previous decision. So I asked and ensured that officers and the Cabinet members had, or the officers who presented, because the Cabinet member's not there, had with them the relevant previous information in case they were asked about it in the course of your scrutiny. Now, clearly, that wasn't resolved to your satisfaction in that regard, but those papers are available. But there's no secrets here. They're not hiding anything. This is a policy decision taken elsewhere that we're just following through, and this is purely to facilitate that arrangement, which, as you point out, I hope everybody agrees is a sensible thing to do. So there's no secrets here. We've seen those previous papers. We know the context in which this is being done. We know that it's necessary to facilitate the deal. The offer's there for any member of your committee, or we can send your scrutiny committee all the relevant papers, all the old papers in relation to it, if that's what you so wish. But actually, it's something that we feel needs to be get on with. We feel we've seen and got enough information to be able to make an informed decision, and we don't want to delay the process. That's it from my point of view. So also, Councillor Eldratt, you indicated next.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sorry, this is not going to be popular, what I'm going to say, Chair, but you can't get your story straight for a start. So on the one hand, you're saying, as leader, when you saw this, that you identified that the paper was substandard and that needed more context. But what Councillor Ralston is saying is it was only after scrutiny pointed out that this paper was substandard and didn't have the context that today you've gone away and done that due diligence and found that detail and checked everything out. Quite frankly, Chair, that should be done before a paper ever gets onto the agenda for a Cabinet meeting. Absolutely, that work should be done, and I am utterly, utterly appalled that as the Cabinet, you did not do that work. The other thing that I'm utterly appalled at is that one of the officers who's named as the sponsor of this paper informed us last night that they hadn't had sight of the paper before, or hadn't had adequate sight of the paper before it went on to the Cabinet agenda. From a governance perspective, this is shocking. You are allowing things onto the agenda of your meetings, that you are making decisions without you doing the due diligence to make sure that those papers are adequate, without you investigating to see whether or not the content is right or whether or not all the rules are being followed. But also, you've got officers who also haven't been able to do that work. So that's the first thing. It's not a popular thing to say, but this is a mess from a governance perspective. And absolutely, this paper, you should not make this decision tonight. It is wrong to make this decision tonight. I also want to be clear, let's not mislead Cabinet members or mislead the public, right? We were told, Councillor Webb this evening has said that the 25 beds that this refers to is for new residents of those nursing homes. We were told at scrutiny last night by an officer that most of those 25 beds would actually be for the existing residents, of which there are 19, I believe. That's what we were told by an officer at scrutiny last night. So somewhere, scrutiny's been given the wrong information. Now, if this is for 25 potentially new residents and not for the 19 existing residents, then actually you're probably looking at less than 12 months of care on the basis of Ashen Care's rates, which we had a look at last night. So that doesn't give any stability in terms of Ashen Care staying in the market long term, if that's what it is. But also, how is this going to work in the sense of the way that social care works, as was described to us last night, is actually people have a choice. If somebody is going into a residential care home, we don't allocate them a home that they go to. They make a choice as to which residential care home they want to go into. So how do we guarantee that they are going to want to go into one of these Ashen Care homes? These places may be empty, and we may be paying for places that never get filled. The final thing, Chair, on this is please let's not mislead the public. There is nothing about this which guarantees that £7 million will be spent on those 3 care homes to renovate them. There is nothing in the contract with Ashen Care for the sale or transfer of these assets. The money that we will get is the £700,000. That is guaranteed. That's what the sale is. But there is nothing in those contracts that says that Ashen Care has to invest £7 million in those homes. So please do not mislead people in this room and suggest that this will guarantee that investment, because it won't. So I'm absolutely appalled. And Councillor Anderson is right about the scrutiny angle, and he's right to raise the scrutiny. If we're going to have scrutiny in place, we should do it properly and make sure that it's robust, and you haven't done that. But from a government's perspective, this is an absolute mess.
So it sounds like you've gone off your own policy, Lisa, but in terms of the governance side of things, when we receive reports and they're signed and there's a clear indication who's seen and signed off reports, that's what we take it as, and that's all we can do on that subject. That sort of matter, and the quality of the reporting, in terms of, not because it should include all the details of the previous decisions, where it was lacking was context, and senior officers have taken that on board and will deal with that in terms of future reports. Roy, did you want to come back on anything else on that respect?
I've got to be able to back you up and say that, yes, it was 2 days ago when you called me into the leader's office and asked about context in this report, and we then went round to get all the detail. We then asked that that detail be made available to scrutiny last night. If that detail wasn't available, then I can only apologise to you, because that detail should have been there last night on request. With regard to the £7 million, no, we can't guarantee £7 million, but Agincare have committed to refurbishing and bringing up to modern standards 3 care homes that we had not got a chance of refurbishing at the time, and I'm not arguing with that decision. There are currently 19 residents in the homes. The 25 would be new residents, and as Councillor Eldred has said, it's the choice of residents and their family as to whether they go into an Agincare provision. That is why
you're sort of straying into looking over the whole decision again and reviewing what this is all about, because that's not what this paper is about.
That is why we're asking for a waiver for up to £615,000. So we're not saying that we are putting 25 residents into those properties or into those residential care beds. What we are saying is that up to £615,000 can be used for that purpose, and it will give Agincare the opportunity to get onto our dynamic purchasing system for future purchases, which is what this is about. It's about purchasing of care in the city for those residents that need it. We would be spending this money on care no matter what. Thank you, Chair.
Ralston. I'll come back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify with Lisa about getting our story straight. Unfortunately, Lisa, I wasn't in the building Monday or Tuesday due to childcare problems and various other bits and bobs, which is irrelevant to this. But I personally didn't see this until today, and therefore have been dealing with it today. The other 2 members will have obviously been dealing with it in their own time. In terms of picking up on it, you're absolutely right. In terms of this particular contract, is about the 615 potential. You mentioned it being, it wouldn't even secure 12 months. It's actually around 16 months potentially, and with the fact that when our dynamic purchasing system will be put into play in January 2020, obviously that would be that would supersede and add to the value of those care placements that we would seek to have. The reality is that we need care places. This is going to be a player within that market that we can secure at this particular point in time. As I said, nothing is hidden. All of the devil's in the detail, which we agree. The context needed to be there, but there is nothing that within that is hidden. It's detailed. It's just the logic and understanding needed to be clear. We've done that. The alternative is to take it to urgent leaders. We're not doing that. We're coming here today, being clear, talking, making it completely clear and transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we accept the comments that have been made about making sure that going forward scrutiny is detailed. And I can't speak of anybody else on anybody else's behalf, but that is my current view and status on this particular issue.
I think Councillor Holmes just wants to comment on the context side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the points are all valid, I think, in terms of Cabinet members' response, and obviously the Chair of Scrutiny as well has made some very good points. I would say, though, that Roy's point about ensuring context was offered, I think it wasn't in written form necessarily, because if you look at the second paragraph of the scrutiny minutes or the recommendations, it clearly shows that there was some context offered verbally by officers to the committee. And I'm sure there was more to that than there's actually written here. So the Cabinet, the context was there, and for me, it's not a case of unpicking that decision. You know, it was made. We move forward on that basis. I think Councillor Wilson has said it was a sound decision. We're not here to dismantle that and change direction. The context is there that decision was made, and we are where we are now in terms of taking that forward. So I think it's a little unfair to suggest that officers didn't offer the context. I think they were there to do that, and they did to a certain extent. But I do take the point on board that maybe we can learn lessons on ensuring how that context and that detail is presented next time.
Councillor Aldred.
Well, if only the current administration had not unpicked other sound decisions made by the previous administration, maybe the city wouldn't be in quite such a mess as it is now.
Can we stick to the item on the agenda, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I can stick to the agenda. So, Cabinet Member for Finance, this is a finance report, and the Cabinet Member for Finance didn't see it until today. Okay, that's... But categorically, we were told at executive scrutiny last night that the up to 25 beds would include the funding for the 19 existing residents. We're being told something completely different now by the Cabinet member. So somewhere, someone's either been wrongly briefed or we're getting the wrong information. This is really, really worrying. And, fundamentally, I think the problem here, Chair, is that these are your reports, these are your decision, you are running the council.
Can I just ask,
this is relevant, yes. And actually, you are putting the blame on officers when you should be taking the responsibility yourself. And if you were fronting your own Cabinet papers, we wouldn't have this problem, because you would then have to take responsibility for the content and not fob that off on officers.
Councillor Anderson, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I just want to sort of reiterate that certainly the view that came from a majority decision on executive scrutiny was not to suggest that there was any cloak or dagger reasons going on. It was to suggest that we just weren't happy with the process as a whole. And yeah, absolutely, officers did provide verbal reports, and I think that it was those verbal reports which led to some of the raised questions and the alarm bells, which is, I think, an example of good scrutiny. And so, just to be clear on that, no one certainly, well, the official view of the committee was certainly not, and it certainly wasn't voted on, that it was to suggest that there was any, underhand reason for this. But the processes need to be firmed up now. I think we need to learn a lesson from that, and we also need to get to a place where there are no sort of surprises like this. And the other thing I say, it doesn't matter who caught sight of it when. And I've had ill health lately, and I've got a baby, so these things do happen, whereby it's not always easy to see things at the time. But I just feel like a little bit of a feedback to the committee on this now from potentially a cabinet member would be more ideal, just saying what you're going to do moving forward with our recommendation. So you're not necessarily accepting it, as we've alluded to, but maybe what's going to change a little bit. Thanks.
Okay, I'm not sure what more information we can give you, but if there is something, and if you ask us for anything, any other information in writing to this, we'll share it with you, absolutely, without politicising any aspect of it. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Grace, thank you for your patience in waiting for your turn.
Well, you might not want to thank me now. I get the feeling that the Cabinet are very confused around this issue. They don't seem to really understand all of what is going on in this particular paper. That's, I may be wrong, but that's the impression that you're giving this meeting tonight, because we have contradictory speeches from different Cabinet members, and all I would say, Chair, is that presents suspicion to other councillors in this council, because when different Cabinet members say different things on the same subject, it does raise a little bit of suspicion. I would like to know whether we're talking about 44 places or whether we're talking about 25 places, because from the scrutiny it seemed to be 25, but from this evening it seemed to be 44. And just that little detail is something that we need to be clear about. I'd like to understand, because I listened to Councillor Webb very carefully when he talked about the current rates for the 19 residents, and I think he was saying that as a reassurance. However, I mean, what safeguards have we got that the residents won't be increased with a hike of charges for the bit that they've got to pay? Because is there any guarantees for that? There doesn't seem to be any information in this paper about that. And how many beds in total are we talking about for all these care homes? Is it just the 44, or are there more in there? And one of the things that coming back to the suspicion is that Councillor Ralston said she didn't have the detail, and yet she was making a very big speech about it, but she didn't have the detail. That is very concerning. If you don't have the detail, what are you actually telling the committee? Councillor Webb talked about guarantees and commitment in two different contexts. Is there a guarantee or is there not a guarantee? Is there a commitment? Is there not a commitment? What is the difference? Is Agincare going to be committed or guarantee 7 million, or are they committed to 7 million? I'm not really sure. It wasn't very clear. And then you talked about officers, and you talked about the report not being in context. Well, my attitude to that is we pay officers an awful lot of money to make sure the context is in reports. If it's not in the reports, then why are they writing such a brief report, if you like, so that councillors end up having this controversy in these sort of meetings? These should be very clear and concise, and we should be able to say, yes, we want to support this, or, have your different political agreements. This is not about a political disagreement. As we've heard from Councillor Anderson, there are some genuine concerns from cross-party, and I think you should really consider what the executive scrutiny are reporting to you and recommending to you. Thank you.
Could you be more precise about how you think the two Cabinet members' contributions are different?
Oh, right, okay, so you're questioning me. You weren't listening to the different reports from the different Cabinet members. For a start, you said...
You made a statement.
I'll give you one example. I'll give you one example, Councillor Poulter. You said that the context wasn't there. Councillor Holmes said the context was there. They are two different reports of the same thing. Now, the context is either there or it isn't there.
Just going to say, I said, when I saw it, that the context wasn't there. Councillor Holmes has pointed out that context was discussed in the course of the meeting. So there's no difference of opinion or contribution there.
Okay, we had a report from the Overview and Scrutiny Chairman that said that it was reported 25 places, and we had a Cabinet member saying that there are well, 44 places in effect.
What
I'm saying is there are differences.
Just hang on a second
The
then,
way
'cause-
they were reported, there were differences in the way things were reported.
So let's let the Cabinet member answer that. He's already answered it once. I heard him, I was listening. So let's let him answer it again.
To be clear, Chair, as part of the contract of sale of the 3 care homes to Agincare, 19 current residents will be guaranteed their place there for life, paid for by the City Council at the current rates, and they will be adjusted for inflation as we go forward. So there are currently 19 existing residents in these homes that are guaranteed their place. What we're asking for under finance and contract procedure rules is that we give up to £615,000 for potentially 25 future residents. So that's potentially. That would mean that 25 people actually opt to go into the Agincare accommodation. If they only get 5, then that 615,000 wouldn't be used. But up to a maximum of 25, that 615,000 would be used. This would enable Agincare the opportunity to get onto our new system of payments, so the dynamic purchasing system, whereby any new residents then would be block contracted through our social care provision as with this, but using the dynamic purchasing system.
Okay. So, just one other reflection. In terms of Councillor Ralston's contribution, as she explained, she hadn't seen the report until this morning. She's taken the time today to do what she needed to do in respect of the paper and find out the information that she needed to find out, and I take it that she's satisfied that she has enough information to make an informed decision. And we'll deal with that in a moment when we look at the recommendations, which are in relation to this 2.1 and 2.2, I assume, on 11B. Sorry? Well, we got, yeah, I'm not going to go there. 2.2, 2.1 and 2.2 of the item 11B. So can we take those recommendations, please, Cabinet?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, good. Well, that deals with item 11. Leaves us with, I need to read the spiel now to say that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following item on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can we clear the public gallery, please? Oh, there's nobody there. Okay, so who's going to deal with item